support everyone's efforts to try and do what they need to do. So we're coming up in one, two. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It's a joy to be with you. We're talking about red lines. There is so much going on politically, and we just have to talk about it all. Rahm Emanuel, the mayor of Chicago, well, he had been the mayor of Chicago until Laquan McDonald, 16 shots at a cover up, right? Yeah, well, he helped the police cover up the murder of that teenager and it pushed him out of office. But there were troublesome signs along the way. You do remember, well, many of you don't, the head of the Chicago Teachers Union, may she rest in peace, a fierce advocate for our children, Karen Lewis, confronted him about closing attorney Mark Fancher and Theo Hardiman more than 50 schools in the Black community. He said that 25% of them aren't going to make it anyway. Yeah, he said that. I was like, wait a minute. Now, mind you, this is the man who launched his mayoral bid from the White House. Remember, he had been the chief of staff to President Obama, but he had been disrespectful to him. I remember reading this Washington Post story when he was cracking his knuckles, and that was irritating the President Obama. And he asked him to cut it out. He was in a meeting with Nancy Pelosi and others in leadership. He got up, according to this Washington Post report, Theo Hardiman and Mark Fancher, and walked behind the president and started cracking his knuckles in his ear.
Wow.
Oh, it doesn't stop there. We can just keep on going and going and going and going and going. And so when he had been in the political hinterlands for several years. So when he was nominated by Biden to become the ambassador to Japan, which is a very prestigious position, people were very angered by that. I said, wait a minute, what is this? You know, someone who's been stridently racist. Yes, he has been. Very offensive to Black people. And now he said, I'm not done with public service. I hope public service is not done with me. And for his portion, he has also followed that up with, now people are saying, well, maybe J.B. Pritzker is going to appoint him to one of the Senate seats. For his portion, he's saying now, Tio, that I'm going to start with you, that I'm going to support J.B. Pritzker. I'm like, well, has the deal been cut? Tio Hartman.
Well, first of all, let me say this.
WVON, every Sunday, you've got to hear him from 6 to 7 Central Standard Time, WVON. Theo Hardiman, go.
Okay, yeah. But first and foremost, Rahm Emanuel, looking at when they closed down the schools in the African American community. Now, some people may not want to hear this, but I'm on the ground level in the African American community here in Chicago. He probably should have. Let me just put it like this: he should not have closed all the schools at one time. Number one, but a lot of the schools he closed down, they went from having anywhere from 800 students to like 50. That's what was going on. And I think he got some bad advice when it came down to closing the schools down. For example, in the year 2025, right now, Austin High School on the far west side was suited to hold around 1,000 students. They have less than 100 students in their school today. And Manley High School on the west side has around 50 students. So the point I'm making here, the inability for the African American community to kind of really, really stop a lot of the violence going on in the community had led to a mass exodus of African American people leaving Chicago. Seriously, and I want to make that clear. The numbers speak for themselves.
But Tio, what about these guns that have been left in our community?
Right. All of that's part of the gun violence problem. You have guns.
But I'm just saying because I mean, these guns have been left by the railroad tracks. This is a big hub it's the center of America. Everything crosses through Chicago. Well, and they have huge caches of guns and rifles that are left in the middle of the community. No one knows where they come from. Everybody talks about it. Everybody knows that's happening.
Now we know where they're coming from. You know, it's a setup. You know, you can purchase laser beam guns in the Black community right now. You can purchase Dracos, these automatic weapons. You got guys walking around with guns in shopping bags, selling guns like they sell bootleg gym shoes. I mean, literally.
Yeah, but I'm saying because they're being placed in our community.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, I just want to establish that.
Yeah, they're being placed in our community without a doubt. It's a diabolical undercurrent type of plan, Santita. Yeah. And then I just want to add too. Now, Laquan McDonald, I was one of the guys that led the charge to oust Rahm Emanuel. We shut down Lakeshore Drive with Reverend Livingston. We shut down Michigan Avenue with several other African American leaders. So I was on the forefront when it came down to the Laquan McDonald when the cover up. Another situation. Rahm Emanuel, he covered it up without a doubt, but he got bad advice once again from some black leaders and some black politicians to pay the family $5 million to kind of sweep it under the rug. And the thing is, because the mindset is that the black families would take the payoff. The Laquan McDonald's family received $5 million when they could have received about 30 million. And don't get me wrong, it'll never bring Laquan back to
No, it
life.
won't.
They could have received $30 million. He got bad advice. So Rahm, actually, he was complicit in covering up a straight up murder.
So wait a minute. So $30 million would have made it all right?
No, that's what I'm saying. It wouldn't have brought the life back. It wouldn't have made it right at all.
No, because I'm telling you all these settlements, I have a problem with
right.
Them. And I'm like, yeah, okay, settlements, I hear you. But on one level, you couldn't settle with the indigenous people of the United States.
Exactly. There you go.
They said, no, we have an insult level. I want my land. Keep your money.
There you go.
They shoot up black folks. We get a settlement, and then that's it. And then somebody else gets shot. It's not advice he was getting, because you and I both know that he has he has always had a council of black folks in the clergy.
That's what I'm talking about.
In the activist community, all that, because I know we're not part of it. And he resents us, people like him resent us, and Reverend, and people and the black folks who he's working with, and the brown folks who he's working with resent us too, because we're like, no, this is not how this is supposed to work. So I'm saying, let's be careful about how we frame this, because everybody's getting played, T.O.
No, everybody's getting played all over the field, okay?
By someone like him.
Yes. But that's what happened. So we really marched on every step of the way. So he finally stepped down. But believe it or not, I made peace with Rahm about a year and a half ago, and he made peace with me, because I'm the kind of guy, once we stand up and we demonstrate, we organize, and we get the job done, then we have to go back to the table and try to work on the restorative justice process, all right? But at the same time, I don't believe, now it's easy for some Caucasian people in leadership to forget what he did, but if an African-American man was to do anything close to what he may have been, what he did, I don't think they would get a second chance like Rahm Emanuel is receiving right now. He got appointed as ambassador to Japan, and he covered up when you cover up murders, and there was a preponderance of evidence that dictated that Cook County was the #1 county for wrongful convictions of African American men in particular. So Rahm, I don't know where he fits in when it comes down to his re-emergence, trying to get back involved in politics. I don't know if it'll be a good move, but some people just forget. They forgive, and it's old saying, you can forgive, but don't forget. I think people are forgiving, and they're forgetting what he was involved in. All right, Santita?
Look, I'm always about reconciliation.
Yes.
Okay? But the thing is, you're supposed to truly apologize.
Yes.
Okay? Now, everything that he has done in his career has been so racist and so mean. Mm-hmm. Now, I understand that many of these schools were underpopulated. Yes. But he said he was going to make things right. Because the thing is, we've had those schools before they were underpopulated were overpopulated. I mean, I'm someone who came through the public school system in schools that had small class sizes and all of that. No, these schools that you named, they didn't have that. And they've been under-resourced.
Yeah, that's major.
And I mean, of course it is. So there's what he and for him to say that 25% of these kids aren't going to make it anyway, Tio, put that in your.
Yeah, that was. Yeah. No, he was never supposed to make that kind of statement.
No. He is supposed to make that statement, because he's supposed to tell me how he feels and what he believes. Okay. I want him to do that. I want to know what you think. I don't care how you feel. I want to know what you believe. Well, that is it. I mean, that's insulting to me. That you would give up on my children.
Yeah.
Ain't nothing to make up. You can't. I can't make up with you on that. I can't.
Yeah, that's a hard one there, Santita. But I will say this much: the failure of the Chicago public schools is a failure of Black leadership here in Chicago.
No, it
I
is not.
understand
You
that.
know
Now,
it
now
is. Let me tell you.
let me clarify what I'm
No,
saying,
no, no,
Santita.
no. Let me say
I'm
this.
I'm just
Let me.
I'm on the ground level. That's why I'm telling you
No, no,
what
no.
I see and what I know.
I'm someone who went K through 12 public schools.
Okay.
No, no, no. I didn't have to grow up poor in order to
Mm.
be on the ground level. So I'm not even buying into that. That does not
Well,
go. No, no, stop. That ain't gonna work. I've lived with black people all of my life.
no, what I'm saying, I need to add
What?
to it, Santita. That's all I
No,
want to add.
I'm saying to you because I get a little hot about this, a little
Okay.
warm, because no, no, no. The school system was designed to fail us. It was. This
Okay.
is not on. We don't fund the school system. The school
Right.
system didn't collapse. It's been collapsed. If they want, my
Right.
sister teaches all over the world. She has been a college professor in
Yeah.
Morocco. She's a college professor right now, a university professor in Japan. She
Okay.
has studied global education policies. That's what her PhD is in. She said to go to Norway and to turn on the radio, Mark Vancher, and to be able to learn another language. There is no plan to educate Americans, Tio,
Hmm. Okay.
because we want to keep people uneducated because uneducated people are managed, not governed.
Okay,
Okay.
Santita.
Now I've talked all over you. Go on, honey.
Now you good? No, no, we're good. That's why we had the talk show, because we're not gonna always agree. Now the reality is that the Black Family Foundation has really collapsed in Chicago. That's not the same for all Black families, but the reason I say this a failure of the Black leadership is because I understand funding, the lack of funding, and some of the schools have been on the bottom end of the receiving stick when it comes to resources. But at the same time, right now in Chicago, literally, Santita, in the summertime, African American kids cannot even play at the parks because of the gun violence. You don't even see African American kids hanging on their blocks.
Sure.
Everybody's indoors now. People don't want to go to school because they're scared. That's what I'm talking about. So
I
if
am
you're
talking
scared,
about that too.
yeah.
Absolutely.
And if you're scared and you're thinking about what's going to happen to you, that's why the enrollment was actually the enrollment decreased because of a lot of the crazy stuff that's going on in our
Tio,
community.
Tio,
Yes,
white kids are shooting up white children
I know
all
that,
over the
Santita.
country. This is the most
Yeah,
violent society on
yeah,
earth. No,
I
no,
got
no,
you.
no. And no one talks about the collapsed white family. No one
Well,
pathologizes. No, nobody pathologizes white kids.
okay.
No one wants to examine these boys from Littleton, Colorado, from wealth, from affluent, I would say affluent
Uh-huh.
black white families who walked around in dark clothing, goth clothes for a year. People knew that they were problematic. Then they walk in one day and they shoot everybody they can find, and they're from affluent families, and no one wants to even talk about them.
I hear you, Santita. Let me just put these numbers out there quickly. The national average rate per 100,000 is 5 to 6 people per 100,000 when it comes to victims of gun violence. On the west side of Chicago, in Austin, East Garfield, and West Garfield, the numbers are 34 to 40 per 100,000 people,
Mhm.
predominantly African American communities. Don't get me wrong. I'm just putting some stats out there. So what I'm saying is that we have to do a better job, as you know, when it comes to building that foundation in our community once again, so we have over 1,000 abandoned storefronts from 79th and Damon to 79th and South Shore. Very dilapidated, a lot of dilapidated
Yeah.
businesses, houses. You know the story, Santita. But
And they have
the point,
moved 300,000 black people out of Chicago.
there you
The
go,
plan,
there you go.
look, it, America's the only society
Yes,
that has kept the people they enslaved in the society. The plan was always to get us out of here.
that's right.
Okay. So
Yes,
there is a plan to jam black people.
no doubt.
Look at Rosewood. Look at Tulsa. So
Yeah,
all this blaming and shaming of black people, I got a problem with that when I know that there's a plan to take us out. Are there things that we need to be doing? Absolutely.
right.
Absolutely.
That's all I'm
But
saying.
no, 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 no. I'm not, that's not all I'm saying. I'm saying all of it. And
Hmm.
I'm saying if we don't look at it globally, don't talk to me about a collapsed black family. When I have white families who look nice, who send their sons out here to kill everybody.
Yeah.
And nobody talks about their problems. Nobody.
Okay.
And that for me is problematic.
That's
I'm
fair.
not trying, I'm not trying to shame and blame, but are you for
Mhm.
real?
Yeah. Well, I
They're
received your
not
message here, but yeah.
they're not dropping boxes, huge caches of weapons in the white community. They're doing it in the black community. Fully
Yeah.
locked and loaded automatic weapons.
Yeah, just
Really?
like the failed war on drugs, same scenario.
No, it wasn't failed. They dropped the drugs in our community.
Yeah, that's what I
It,
mean.
it,
It was a
it was
failed. Yeah,
it
they
was a
dropped in our community.
no, it was a war on us.
Yes,
That's what it is.
that's
So
exactly what it was.
we've gone back and forth, but Attorney Mark Fancher,
All
whew,
right.
and I love my TO. Just
That's right.
no, but stay right there. But Attorney Fancher is sitting there going, whoo, look, Santita, let me. The smoke is rising from your hair.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, but I mean, it's just it's just a lot, and I'm just saying that there is there are red lines. I mean, I always hear what Black people are not and what we're not doing, and I hear you. Are there a lot of things that we need to be doing better, right, and doing right? Yeah. Reverend is my father's always preached personal responsibility, and so the Republicans thought they could get him, to Mark. But
Yeah.
where they lost him, or where they knew they could not get him, was he would not absolve white people of culpability and accountability. He
Hmm.
said, yeah. The best deterrence to racism is excellence. But
Yes.
you must deal with your racism. See, Black Republicans, many of them, many Black conservatives don't want to deal with that. They just say, oh, okay, no, you're the problem. No, I got a problem. I'm people with a problem. I'm not a problem people.
Yes, indeed.
Mark Fancher.
Yeah, I think that this country is so special, and I don't say that in a favorable way, that we can never analyze what's happening here just based on superficial things, the way that things appear, because there is a depth to everything. With respect to the African population in this country, the challenge has always been for those who have power is how to control and contain that population.
That's right.
It started on the plantation because, contrary to what you see on Gone with the Wind, those enslaved Africans were not happy, go lucky, lazy, shuffling people. They were at war. And they were constantly looking for ways to resist and rebel, to kill the master if they could. And so they devised slave codes, which restricted them, uh, prohibited them from learning to read, prohibited them from gathering in small groups or possessing weapons or poison, even prohibited them from using drums because they believed that because drums were used in Africa for purposes of communication, that they would be used in North America for purposes of organizing rebellions. And they certainly used torture in order to try and control this rebellious population. Uh, After abolition, then you had, this period during Reconstruction when they used terror. During the extended period of Jim Crow, the number of lynchings were uncountable. W.E.B. Du Bois did as much as he could to try and figure out how many people were being lynched. But then, when there came the Great Migration and African people moving out of the South into northern areas, they were steered, channeled into their own areas. Well, I use the word own advisedly, but they were placed in what were eventually called ghettos. And the belief was that as long as they were living in one concentrated area of a city, that it would be possible to monitor them and control them and contain them and prevent them from rebelling. Just the opposite happened. Uh, During the 1960s, particularly in the aftermath of Dr. King's assassination, that's precisely what these people did. They rose up and they burned entire areas of the city to the ground in acts of resistance and rebellion. I'm not making this up, but there are revelations through the Freedom of Information Act documents and others that show that the Central Intelligence Agency uh, consulted with scientists whose specific responsibility was to figure out ways to control and contain Black militants, those who were likely to engage in these urban insurrections and rebellions. And if you look at some of the proposed methods that they contemplated, you begin to, a lot of things begin to make sense. One of the ideas that they came up with, which was rejected, was to use chemical castration because they concluded that people who, like the ox, who undergoes a similar process, the only thing that he does is he kind of dumbly goes about pulling the cart and doing the work that he's been assigned to do. But that was rejected. They came up ultimately with ideas involving mass incarceration and the distribution of narcotics strategically in the Black community. And we saw how that manifested and the two were used in combination, particularly with respect to what happened in Southern California with the proliferation of crack cocaine during the 1980s, and proceeds of those sales being used to finance uh, counter-revolutionaries in Central America, specifically Nicaragua, and the revelations of all of this by a reporter who was hounded and driven to his death by the CIA. And so when we start to talk about the Black on Black violence and Black on Black crime that we see, we have to understand that that has a source. As was mentioned earlier, those weapons don't just, those are not brought in by Black people. They're brought in by others who want Black people to kill themselves. And the conditions have been established for this type of thing to happen, not always by specific conspiracies or by specifically designed psychological operations, but by just the existence of America in the way that it exists. The idea of white supremacy is something that is so thoroughly ingrained in the life of this society and this country that it is internalized by everybody, not just by white people, but it's internalized by Black youth. And likewise, the idea of Black youth, in particular, Black males more specifically, contributing nothing to the society and actually being a plague on this society, undesirables, people who need to be purged. That idea is not, that concept is not missed by young Black males themselves. They see it and they hear it, and they begin to feel that they are worthless, and they feel that people who look like them are worthless. And not only are they worthless, but they are a menace. And so the idea of a young Black male killing another Black male, in the minds of the killer, those of the killers aren't, that's not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, on some level, they probably wonder why the society has not given them is not giving them a reward for having eliminated somebody who is a menace to the society. So self-hatred can drive a lot of this, and it's very difficult for a community to get a handle on that when all of the forces in the society are mounted against the efforts that might be made to try and reverse all of that. And I think we have to keep that in mind.
We have to keep that in mind because I have to tell you, my brother Jonathan, Congressman Jackson, often says we've got to stop fixing the blame. We've got to start fixing the problem. Because oftentimes Black people are painted as the problem. We've got problems. We're not the problem. And we are human, and all human beings, when faced with a certain set of circumstances, can behave in a certain set of ways. There was this movie with Harry Belafonte and John Travolta some years ago. Perhaps you saw it. Wish I could remember the name of it. But they flipped society on its. They flipped society around. They put Black people on top and white people at the bottom. And so white people were expressing the pain that you see in perpetuative poverty, having come out of slavery, and on and on and on. And you saw the hubris and the arrogance of people who had never been touched by that. Whose feet never touched the ground, who were born on third base, and they thought, as someone said to me, they thought they hit a triple. And that for me is problematic. I will absolutely accept the fact that we have issues. I got that. But wait a minute, you can't tell me that the big problem that we got in American society is that black people have collapsed, that it's the failing black family. When you've got all these white families who produce these murderers, who kill people en masse. I mean, I saw this tape of Bill Cosby as I bring on Gary Flowers. He was speaking on Dick Cavett's show 50 years ago, and he said, you know what? If a white guy kills someone, when they talk about him on the news, this person has committed a murder. He said, but whenever it's a black person, this black man, this black woman, he said, it is dehumanizing. Oh, he's always been real clear. That's why we knew they were going to come after him. Really? Yeah, y'all. I still love Bill Cosby. I always will. People have their issues. I don't care about that. All I know is that his art, he has used it to lift a whole people and to express to the world who we are on our best day. I know what he would not allow to go out in terms of a message about black people. I know that. And I know he was very careful. He and his wife went to my parents. They said, we want to be careful as we're putting on this Cosby show, because when they were combing Rudy's hair, it's almost like a joke in the black community. She was like, ouch, ouch, you're tender-headed. Ow, ow. He said, but he had Dr. Poussaint, who's a very different artist, who just made his transition, Gary Flowers. I don't know if you know. He died.
Yes. Bless his soul.
Bless his soul. Brilliant
The
psychiatrist.
Cosby Show forever.
The Cosby Show forever. And he said, and he was a tenured professor at Harvard. He was one of the first black ones, psychiatry. But because he was so active in the movement, they would snatch his tenure from him. They played with him on that all the time. But he said, no, don't have her wincing when you're combing her hair, because we don't want to send a message out there, even inadvertently, that black hair is bad hair. So that's the kind of care that Bill Cosby put into the show. We weren't problem people. We were people with problems and who were going to resolve them. So I am protective. I'm protective, but I've got my brother Gary Flowers on. You should know Attorney Mark Fancher. He is absolutely brilliant. Loved him before I met him. I would read his works in Black Agenda Report and every place that was progressive. And he's a brilliant civil libertarian. But in his other life, he is always on my show. And
That's right.
Yours, Gary Flowers, former senior vice president at Rainbow Push. Happy Tuesday, Gary Flowers.
Well, first of all, thank you, my beloved sister. Happy Charter Day to the city of Chicago.
Thank you.
Happy birthday, Chicago. But also happy Mardi Gras. And may I say in the vernacular of the West Bank of Gretna, outside of New Orleans, where my dear aunt Claire Boutet was queen of New Orleans. Le bon temps roulé, baby.
I love it. Black folks got a spin on everything, huh?
You better love it.
Jesus. We're gonna put a spin on French. I ain't mad at us. Come on. What do you make of this political moment that we're in? I mean, what I know, Reverend never gave you a raise, but he made you were vice president, and for good reason.
And field director. I had 5 jobs for one salary.
Well,
let's go with that.
You're gonna do that. You're gonna do that.
I loved it.
That's
and
right.
Santita loved it.
Well, you were loving it. Bless your heart. But talk to us, because we've been talking about Rahm Emanuel, but we kind of moved into just really this moment that in which we find ourselves. I didn't even get a chance to say this, Attorney Mark Fancher and Gary Flowers. You know, former Governor O'Malley from Maryland, who used to be the head of the Social Security Administration, he said that the Doge cuts are going to collapse the agency. He said, so I advise people to start saving their money because come April, 30 to 90 days, these checks are going to stop. And I was talking with Congressman Jonathan Jackson, who said, yeah, I know the president is saying that the cuts are not coming from in Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. He said, but they're already here. They've been tucked inside of different agencies. So,
what Santita, before we leave Rahm Emanuel, I think I don't know what's been said earlier, but I want to bring this point out if it hasn't been noted. Rahm Emanuel's father was on the stage with Ben Gurion in the establishment of the state of Israel.
mm-hmm.
Rahm Emanuel has always been a Zionist, which has never been a friend of democracy or the oppressed. And I was always very curious as to how he kept regurgitating himself in public life. I've read the Axios piece recently where he said, I'm not done with public service, but like a bad penny that keeps showing up, maybe he needs to be put out of service because Laquan McDonald is still dead with 14 gunshots in the back, where Rahm Emanuel, as a mayoral candidate at the time, suppressed the video so as to advance his political aspirations.
Wait a minute, he was mayor and sat on top of it?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean,
to get reelected.
That's right, to be reelected. And I'm just wondering about the insult level. I mean, Mark, you can weigh in on this because he's been rehabilitated. When they brought him, and mind you, when they were closing,
he's been regurgitated, not rehabilitated.
Now they're now I stand.
Let's go with regurgitated.
I stand corrected because he's been pulled back out into public.
That right there.
That part. Oh my word! And he told Karen Lewis, who was the head of the Chicago Teachers Union, she was a fierce advocate for our children, when they were closing these schools. More than 50 of them in the Black community. He said 25% of these kids aren't going to make it anyway. So what are we talking about? Wait, this is someone who would send dead vermin to people in Washington because when he was in Congress, he was in charge of collecting the money. But if he didn't like you, if you were an enemy, he would do horrifying things to you. And I'm like, y'all what'd you say? It's like a bad penny keep popping up. And I'm like, Black people, you got to have an insult level. Well,
your father used to call it, and Reverend, give my best to Reverend Jackson. He used to say some people have a dignity deficit disorder.
Wow.
And with that, even if you take him not against his foibles, but even what he promised when he was mayor, he promised safe streets and solid schools and stable, finances, none of which came true. So why would the citizens of Chicago regurgitate a candidate who didn't deliver the first time? Just politically speaking.
I have no answer for you. I do know this, that Brandon Johnson has historically low poll numbers. He's a good man. And because he tried to handle the migrants in a humane way, he's taken massive hits. He didn't bring the migrants here. They were brought here to him and New York and every place else under the Tent Partnership for Refugees. We hear about the H-1B visas, Gary Flowers, but no one's talking about the Tent Partnership for Refugees, which was signed by Tony Blinken, who was the Secretary of State at the time.
Yes.
The man who created Kobani yogurt started with 300 plus companies that were going to bring refugees in to go to work. Now it's more than 400 companies. No one talks about that. Nobody.
Well, we're talking about it today. And that's why it's so valuable to have your show, Sister Santita, because as we get a shrinking of progressive media in this country, You and I, on the Gary Flowers show on Sundays, WOL in DC, we're going to have to advance the truth because otherwise it'll be rewritten.
Say it again. We can catch you on Sundays at what time?
10 a.m. Eastern on WOLDCnews.com. I'm on Radio 1 out of the nation's capital at 10 a.m. Eastern on Sunday mornings.
That's the only time you have, but I'm so glad. I'm glad that you are on the radio still.
Well, I had 5 days, but they sold the station from under me, even though I had a group to buy it. So there is a targeted move to take away progressive voices. And so we're going to have to, in the spirit of Mama Dukes, who just passed away.
Oh, my goodness.
And the sheroes and heroes of the movement, we're going to have to adapt, readjust, and stay on the battlefield.
Well, you have an open invitation to be on my show any day of the week, because that's the way that we have to do it. We have to be on each other's shows and lift each other up.
What are you doing Sunday morning? I got a spot for you Sunday morning.
I will come after I'm done with Keep Hope Alive. I'll come right on.
10 a.m. Eastern.
I will. That's 9 a.m. Central.
How about that?
I'll roll out of my show, Keep Hope Alive, and I'll roll on over to yours, and you can roll, at whatever time you.
So I got to witness all of your viewers and listeners right now have witnessed that you said yes.
Have you seen my face? I'll be there. I will.
That's
be there.
my sister.
I got no problem. I will be right there. I will roll out of my show and roll on to that.
But let's get back to the point. I think that Rahm Emanuel represents once again a regurgitation of people we've seen before. I can't disassociate him with the Zionist movement in Israel right now. And the false ballooning of Bibi Netanyahu, I think, is giving Rahm Emanuel, a little puffed chest to say, I'm good. I've got the backing of the White House. I've got the backing of Israel. So I can go back into public service. That's where the people of Chicago have to stand up and say, you broke your promises the first time. We don't trust you this one.
But he always does that. I mean, and now you see them, either he can run for mayor, because he said, I'm not done with public service. I hope it's not done with me. And go from there to, he said he's already thrown his support to J.B. Pritzker. And the word on the streets is that, if Dick Durbin steps down, then J.B. Pritzker's going to put him in that space. I'm like, when are we? Hey, and he's trying to run for president. I'm like, are you serious right now? This is so insulting. Gary.
But we've faced this before as people, and we've made adjustments. So I think all of us, not only you and I and those on this show who are listening and viewing, but we're going to have to shift the paradigm. We cannot go about trusting things we've trusted before. We're going to have to say, in the words of my father, may he rest in power, trust in God and check everybody else. And in the words of your father, to turn to each other and not on each other.
Mm-hmm. Amen to that. Attorney Mark Fancher, what about this insult level? What did my father say? A dignity deficit disorder?
That's right.
Yeah, if you want to know where to draw the red line, I draw it in a place where I think most Black people don't, and that is at the shoreline of the United States of America. I mean, I don't want anything to do with it. Ideally, the only reason I stick around and fight is because that's where my people are. But I think we should be done, and I think that Rahm Emanuel and people like that are examples of why. It's not always necessarily just the substance of what they do. Much of it has to do with just their attitude and approach to other human beings. When I first started practicing law, I'd been raised to be courteous and gentlemanly and all of those kinds of things. And I carried that with me into the earliest days of my working life. But what I noticed right away was that in depositions and in hearings and other things, that white men would come into those spaces with carrying themselves in a different kind of a way. It was almost as if I own this, and it may be a man in a black robe who's sitting up there on the bench who's supposed to be in charge, but I'm really in charge. There was an arrogance, a certain audacity that was just a part of who they were. And I think that it's never a surprise when Rahm Emanuel has the audacity and is arrogant, and notwithstanding his past crimes, is willing and able to continue moving as though nothing has happened. And we've seen that so many times with so many politicians who have done the worst kinds of things, but they come back and they keep doing it, and with no hesitation, with no feeling or sense that in any way they should demonstrate any type of remorse or humility, because in their minds, I own this. And I think that our resistance sometimes, while we need to organize and need to figure out strategies and things, we need to do all of that. But sometimes our resistance can be day to day in much the way that our ancestors resisted, just day to day, by when they're told to go out into the fields and pick crops, they don't do it.
And Brother Mark, if I may add, I think when people ask me this question in the last 40 days, I give two very simplistic answers. First, we have to give a damn again. A lot of our people don't give a damn anymore and have given up. Secondly, we have to do what Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. said, and that is turn to each other and not on each other. Out of the Civil War, we had no land, we had no money, we had no little bit of agency. But in 12 years, that was taken by the evisceration of the Reconstruction program by the Hayes-Tilden Compromise of 1877. What did we do then? We built banks. We built insurance companies. We traded with each other. And so the rubric
into politics and
yeah,
populated
the roadmap is there. We just have to get to it. The scripture holds, remove not the ancient landmarks for which our mothers and fathers set. So we have the landmarks. We just have to have the spine to follow their lead.
And I think that a lot of us do have the spine. We just we don't have the plan. We're totally confused. We've been the victims, the targets of psychological operations that have us totally confused, thinking that voting for Trump is a revolutionary act. Killing each other is a revolutionary act. Totally
Well, if I may, Brother Mark, let me flip it. We don't need a plan to buy from Black businesses. We don't need a plan to support each other. We just have to have the will to do it. That doesn't require a plan.
And there's a lot of that kind of thing that we do almost intuitively and instinctively. If we had a plan, we would do it more effectively.
If we had a spine, we would do it because we need to do it.
But you know what? When I was growing up, I will say this, because we do need spine and we do need plan, because the ancient landmark, it has already been done. But when I was a child, you had the plan in that you had the slogan, and not just a slogan, you had buy Black.
Mm-hmm.
You would buy Black. You had the Black pages. Remember those?
And the Black Expo.
That's right. Oh, I mean, that's what Reverend started.
But I have to speak up in defense of our people, because I think we've got the spine. I think we've never stopped fighting. I think that we like to think that we have, but we have not. And we always are just looking for a way to do it effectively. When I don't think that electing Barack Obama did much of anything for us in terms of our progress, but we were convinced that that was the way to struggle. And
some people were.
We did it gloriously.
We know.
No, a lot of people didn't. We didn't know. We knew who he was, and he acted out who he was. So we weren't fooled. And I don't think most people know how to fight. I think most of our people have become complacent. They haven't been on the battlefield. I don't want to
disagree.
go.
I disagree. I think that we continue to fight. We just don't know how to fight sometimes.
Mm.
I maintain that the election of Barack Obama, with almost 100% of our people voting for him, was a reaction to a perception, a widespread perception that this is our pathway to liberation. They were wrong, because in Chicago, people may have known him, but across the country, people did not.
But we were paralyzed by pigment, Brother Mark. All skin folk ain't kinfolk.
I know but people don't, not everybody knows that. And I think that even most recently with this boycott on February 28th, they haven't seen the results of it, but I'll bet you a lot of people participated in it, those who knew. Even with the boycott of Target, they've already seen that their bottom line was impacted by it. These are things that are done spontaneously. When people get shot by the police and our people pour out into the streets, just almost instinctively, and they burn things down, they mobilize, they chant Black Lives Matter, that's a sign of our resistance. And so I don't ever sell our people short. I think our people have demonstrated more courage and have resisted more than any people who've been oppressed than you can look at. I mean, because
I agree with that.
even around the world, people admire the spirit of resistance of Black people in this country. They have been the model, whether it's modeling after the Panthers, whether it's modeling after the Civil Rights Movement, the Black Power movement, the Black Lives Matter movement. We have so many movements. What we lack is a real clear analysis on a mass level of exactly what we're up against. And I think that's the value of shows like this, where we can talk about the fact that it's not the white man. It's not that we just have to.
It is the white man.
We just have to mix we just have to patronize our own. Those are all things that are necessary. But the capitalist system, you've identified Zionism as an enemy, imperialism, and the oligarchy that controls this country. Those are the ones ultimately that are the source of our oppression and our problems. White people on the everyday level, the grassroots white people, working class white people, are dupes. They're pawns that are used against us. And we could go and we could, throw down with entire communities of white working class people, and we might win in that confrontation. But even in victory in that confrontation, we're still oppressed because our lives are controlled by multinational corporations, by capitalists, by billionaires who control the machinery of government.
If I may, Brother Mark, let me quote the great philosopher George Clinton in Parliament Funkadelic. Free your mind and the rest will follow. We are still mentally in chains.
I agree with that.
We still think that white ice is colder. And so it is not the external that inhibits our people, but it's the internal. And those whose grandmothers of our age, grandmothers and perhaps fathers, fought in the modern civil rights movement in the 1960s, many of those people forgot. And what did the people do in scripture when they forgot? They worshiped golden idols.
But let me
and they ran amok.
You make a valid point, but let's be precise about what we're talking about. Yes,
Let's go there.
It is correct. It is correct that we have a lot of internal confusion, but the source of that confusion is external.
I got it, but we got brains, and we've got examples. When our people forged out of nothing, out of whole cloth, banks and insurance companies. For instance, if we were to take a poll of those who are listening and viewing today, how many have a bank account in a black bank?
But listen, you gotta understand that those people in Reconstruction who came out of this period of enslavement, they were not confused. They were very, very clear. And their success.
That's my point.
But I think you all are saying the same thing. But let him finish.
Their success demonstrated success during Reconstruction, prompted our enemies to say, we can't let that happen again. And so we must begin an extended process of psychological operations against these people to keep them disorganized and confused and misdirected. And they've done a very good job.
True.
And I think that that's part of our struggle, is that we must continue to fight on an ideological level. We must continue to provide clarity in our analysis. And we can't blame ourselves for our own confusion. That is externally caused. And we who are not confused have a huge challenge in trying to help our brothers and sisters to get clarity of analysis, because we're confused on every level. Even people who think that they're not confused are confused many times.
I agree.
And so I think that's the real root of the challenge.
Well, everyone, I've got like 3 minutes left, and I'm going to give it to you all as who was it? He said, I have started correctional officer for the lockdown, sending you so much love to your grandbaby. He is hard to please. He said, you have started something, because people want to hear this kind of discussion. Gary Flowers on WOL. And WOL, you can catch them. Just go online, WOLDC, every Sunday, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 a.m. Central Standard Time, 7 a.m. Pacific Time. You want to tell people about the show, because you can see they are putting people off the air, and that is all right, because you know what? We got a ram in the bush. Everybody's got a show. We need to start putting each other on each other's shows.
Exactly. And I'm so glad that you confirmed that you'll be on my show this Sunday.
I am. I said, I have no problems doing that, because we got to do that. And you can come back on next week.
I will.
Because your voice needs to be out there. That's why I have Attorney Mark Fancher on, because you all have great minds. You just need a platform. That's
Thank
all.
you. And thank you.
No. I mean, I already know that. I've known you 1,000 years, Gary Flowers. And all jokes aside, for not a lot of money, you worked so hard. I mean, this freedom struggle is very real to you. And it is for Attorney Mark Fancher. He says things that, oh my gosh, he makes everybody's hair stand on end. But you all are both soldiers in this struggle. And
But Sister Santita, I just have 10 seconds to compliment your mother, Dr. Jacqueline Jackson. One of the biggest compliments I got at Push, she was sitting in the community hall with Ms. Lucille Loman.
Oh.
Okay, and Reverend Willie Taplin Barrow. And she said, boy, I've been looking at you, and I like the way you move. You get things done. And that was the biggest compliment coming from your mother. Okay, some 30 years ago.
No, that's huge.
It's huge. That's ginormous.
Because my mother is good for spotting a flaw and telling her husband, now you need to fire them.
Right, right.
Yes, my mother keeps it 100. So I'm going to get some closing thoughts from each of you. You get a minute apiece. Of course, Mark Fancher, you, and then you, Gary Flowers. But Attorney Fancher, we've got a lot of work to do. I'm going to be watching the address tonight, and to show you how the Lord works. It's just, life is so interesting. The Bush family, yes, George H.W. Bush's family, their Points of Light Foundation are giving my father an award tonight. I will say this: after he won in 1988, he invited us all over to the White House, but not just my father. He invited my brothers and I. He said, Reverend, our children should know each other. Wherever we are in the arena, we should always keep the lines of communication open. And we need to start doing that. And you guys, if you just look around, some people who never thought they'd be without are about to face that day right now. And we should not engage in schadenfreude and be excited about the downward turn in someone's fortunes. We need to turn to each other, what did Reverend say, and not on each other.
Exactly.
And right this ship of state. Attorney Mark Fancher, your closing thoughts.
Yeah, I'll say this, that the lesson that I learned from my early years of practice in dealing with arrogant white men is that the way to drive them crazy is to ignore them. They are so accustomed to having the world pay them attention and hang on their every word that when you ignore them, it drives them absolutely crazy. And there are a lot of arrogant white men who are occupying a lot of space and a lot of oxygen right now who need to be ignored. Rahm Emanuel's included, Donald Trump is included. We need to ignore these people and focus on building our program. I mean, we need to watch them. We need to keep an eye on them, but we can't let them know that they're making us dance to their tune. When they do things, we can't react in ways that cause them to think that, yeah, we still control these people. We control ourselves, have our own agenda, focus on building things rather than remaining in a defensive posture all the time just because of their madness and craziness.
Coming out of slavery, that's what we did. We were not living just in opposition to, we were living because of. And we can do that once again. Gary Flowers, WOLDC. People want to hear your show. Wow. 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Yes.
That's the final word.
Well,
Starting
thank you
with
so
how
much.
we can find you.
Yes. Once again, WOLDCnews.com on Sunday mornings. Or you may find me on the web with my Black History tours of walkingtheward.com. But I want to elevate another point that Attorney Mark just put, and that is we have to play offense and not just defense. In that we have to, I would take issue. I don't think that we should be neutral with them. I think that we should be offensive with them. Clifford Alexander, who was the first Black Secretary of the Army, advised a bunch of young cats 30 years ago. He said, for every question they ask you, ask them 2 questions. So if they wanted to put you on defensive on what's your background and what's your pedigree, ask them, how did they get their job? By nepotism? Did you have a rich uncle? So I think we need to play offense, not only against our external foes, but we need to play offense on teaching our people. Most of our people don't know because they haven't read. And so let's know more so we can do more. As we do more, we will get more. Thank you.
Well, you know what? I can't wait to get you and Mark Fancher together again because this is
no doubt.
Great stuff. I love it.
Thank you, Attorney Mark.
I love it. I love it.
My honor and my pleasure.
I'm going to connect the 2 of you, but I love you all, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. And Gary Flowers, let me know when you're going to come back to the show. You got a home here. You know that.
All love. Laissez-les bon temps rouler on this Mardi Gras Tuesday.
Okay. Oh, okay, mighty man of Omega Sci-Fi.
That too. Friendship is essential to the soul.
All right. Send you some Delta love. Boom. Love you. God bless you.
Love you.
AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota.